Running could end tomorrow, and I'd feel really proud of who I am as a person. And there were points in my career where if that happened, I would not feel the same way.
Yeah.
I would feel ready to take on that next step in my life. And that's not me saying that I'm ready for sport to be over, because I love it and it's a really important part of my life. But I'm really proud of how much I've been able to grow as an individual and know that there's so much more to life than college athletics.
So we're both from Seattle. That's how we know each other. We've known each other for a minute. What was life like? Like, how did you get passionate about running?
Yeah, so I was a baseball player for most of my childhood. I didn't. Yes, I was
Baseball to distance running.
Yeah,
Wow.
second base and center field were my favorite positions, and I played club teams through the beginning of high school. And I didn't really think of it as I did cross country and track in middle school, but I thought of it as more conditioning. That was what I'd tell people when I would go to cross country practice. I'd be like, "Oh, I'm just going for conditioning for baseball," because I always thought people thought cross country was like a loser sport. So I was like, "Yeah, I'm just doing it."
It's not.
I mean, I know, but I always was just saying, yeah, I'm training for baseball. In baseball,
Yeah.
you only have to sprint like 90 feet, so it's not
Yeah.
it's not, you don't need endurance for that. But
Mhm.
I did cross country and track in middle school and high school. Baseball is in the spring, and I didn't have a sport that I was going to do in the fall. And my mom told me going into freshman year of high school that I had to do something in the fall, and I was a little hesitant. I was like, "Oh, Mom, I'm going to do baseball in the spring. It's fine." She's like, "All right, you're either going to sign up for cross country or you're going to sign up for theater and do the play," which I think was Oliver Twist that year. And her logic was, if you're going to a new school, you want to meet new people and like make new friends right away. And the best way to do that is to join something like a sport or a club. And I didn't want to do the play. So I turned out for cross country. Definitely.
Imagine how different your life would be if you turned out for the
100%.
play.
I would have played JV baseball through high school, and then that would have been funny.
When did running stop being something you enjoy to something like, this is not only my passion, but this is my identity now, and this is like, I'm going all in on this thing right here?
Right. Yeah. So I'd say that would probably be the end of my sophomore year. Up until that point, I was an okay runner, but I didn't think of it as being something I'd do beyond high school. At the end of my sophomore year, beginning of my junior year, my parents went through a divorce, and it was tough because, I mean, that's a tough age. I was 15, 16 at the time, and I had two younger brothers, and I kind of took it on as as the older brother to be the tough one and to help them through it as well. And I did pour myself into running at that time. I realized that I could really just channel all my emotions into training really hard, into competing. And that sophomore to junior year gap was probably the summer I worked the hardest in high school. And that junior year, I saw great strides in my performance, but I also worked a lot harder than I had in the past. And my identity as a person was like this, the scales tipped a little bit. I was much more a runner than I was Jacob anymore. I was a high school runner that was really trying to push it to the next limit. And sophomore to junior year, you go through puberty. I grew a lot. I grew probably 4 or 5 inches over that time. And junior year, I started to have the thought that, okay, maybe I could take this beyond high school. At first, it was maybe Division II, Division III schools I was looking at. And then my junior track season, I ran a 4:19 mile, which isn't incredible for a high school runner, but that's a mark that can get you a walk-on spot for most Division I schools.
Yeah, it's respectable.
It's a respectable mark, and that's what I intended to do after that. I decided that I could either go for a scholarship at Division II or walk on at a Division I program. And I was fortunate to be in a position where my parents were going to be able to help me afford college, so they were pushing for me to make that decision to go run Division I as a walk-on.
So if we go back to the summer going into your junior year of high school, so Had your parents divorced already at that point?
It was
Or were
spring
they
of my
going
sophomore year.
spring of your sophomore year?
Yeah.
So then, right after that school year ends, you start summer. Walk me through what your life is like, and then what it was like committing so much into running as well. Because like, I mean, I couldn't imagine going through
Yeah.
that at that age, because, my parents got divorced when I was like 5
Yeah.
or 4. Like, I never knew anything different than
Mm-hmm.
only having my mom and then eventually a stepdad and then only seeing my dad on the summers.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know what like a normal household looked like.
Right.
What was that summer like, if you think back and dig deeper into it?
Yeah. No, I mean, running seemed to be the only thing that was constant in my life. That was the thing
Really?
that I can control. I mean, when you're going through something traumatic like that, you kind of latch onto things that you can control. And
Mm-hmm.
my home environment was completely thrown off because my mom was really sad, my dad wasn't there anymore, and my both my brothers were really, like, they were young, but so they didn't really understand what was going on. I mean, one was early middle school, the other was elementary school. So they didn't really get the picture the way I did. So they were also really sad and thrown off, and I felt like I couldn't have these normal conversations that I used to have with them for that summer. And I'd say I definitely closed myself off a little bit from my family and from some of my friends, but running was an opportunity for me to really control my training. I mean, running is an individual sport in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to really push myself with my own training and really take control of what that summer would be for me. And I think in a lot of ways it paid off because I did have a great junior year, but I think it did create an identity shift for the second half of my high school running experience because I started to stress out more over races. I started to put more weight on my races and my self-worth and satisfaction. And I think in some ways that can pay off because you're pouring so much into it, but in other ways it can really start to create a negative relationship with you and your sport.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's almost necessary for your identity to be like overrun by your sport so that you
Right.
can do the work necessary day in, day out by yourself too when you're in high school to achieve the goals you want to achieve. Running's such an individual sport and you're doing it alone so much. Like, I think back to my high school days and I'm like, every run I did was by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And on those runs, like, at least for me, there was a lot of self-reflection
Mm-hmm.
in that. I'm wondering how your perspective evolved on those runs that summer.
Yeah, I realized that running was something I wanted to carry into college because at that point, parents getting divorced middle of high school, you don't think about fixing the relationship you have with your family in that moment. As a selfish 16-year-old, I was thinking, all right, let's get out of here. Let's go out of state somewhere. Let's find a college that I think I can push myself athletically, and we'll move forward that way. I will. So I really was throughout the rest of high school thinking about that next step. I was looking to the next step in my career.
Wow, you were just trying to get out.
Yeah, I was really just trying to get out.
Why was that? Like, why was that divorce so difficult?
Well, I mean, it's
Of course, any divorce is gonna
yeah,
be
any
difficult.
divorce is difficult. I think the thing to remember is that everybody's affected by that stuff differently. For me personally, it
Yeah.
was really challenging to have my parents pretty abruptly. I didn't see it coming, and
Really,
yeah.
you didn't know?
Oh no, didn't see it coming. It was just
So
one
what
day.
was that like? How'd you find out?
Dad sat me down and told me he was moving out, and that was it. So it's really challenging in a lot of ways. And I think my experience with it was a little bit different because I was an older brother. I feel a responsibility to my younger siblings to set an example for how we should like move forward as a family. And like, I want to protect my relationship with my dad and with my mom. And it's, you have to like separate that now. It's not a relationship with both your parents. It's like an individual relationship with your two parents. So that was challenging. I think I didn't take the time to really take care of myself because I was really just trying to put on a brave face, take care of my brothers, and really like be that role model. So
How would you describe the role model you wanted to be for your brothers?
I'd say I wanted them to think that I was tough and that there are more, like, I wanted them to also know that there are other things that you could pour yourself into and like distract yourself almost. Like running was a distraction for me for a lot of that summer. And it's really important to just push through that kind of stuff. I don't think I was as good of a role model back then as I would have wanted to have been, but
Yeah.
I think that's what was going through my head.
What do you think you would tell Jacob sophomore year of high school after your dad sits you down, like knowing what you've been through now and what you've gone through? What would that conversation look like?
Yeah, I definitely say to like slow down with your thoughts and be present. I rushed through the second half of high school. Like I said, I definitely got through that second half quickly because I was looking past high school. I wanted high school to be over so that I could move on to that next step. And it's funny because I get to college, freshman year of college, and I'm dealing with the same issues because as a high schooler, you think when you leave high school and go to college that all of a sudden you're going to be an independent person. And here I am, 22, and I'm still relying on my parents for a lot of things, and I still have to talk to them all the time. And I had this idea in my head that I had just made up that when I graduated, I would never have to deal with my parents again. I wouldn't have to worry about what was going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
But that was definitely a flawed thought.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's so much and it's so overwhelming to think about how difficult that would be for a sophomore. And I'm also thinking about running in the sense of like, running hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, running is painful.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an element of like self-torture in it almost.
Yeah.
And like, you know, for me, when my dad passed away, actually the day, I so vividly remember the day that my brother called me to tell me, yo, dad had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. And I didn't really know how to interpret it because I was like, people get heart attacks all the time. Like, he'll be fine. Or strokes. You know, like, I had just mowed some woman's lawn who had like 5 strokes. And that's why I was mowing her lawn. And I went to Lake Sammamish right after that. I think I had 15 miles on deck anyways. So I'm like, I'm going to do this run anyways. Yeah. At this point, I'm already a runner. It's going into my freshman year of college. And that entire run, I like ran as hard as possible to like, I don't want to say punish myself, but I did have this thought of like, maybe if I suffer more, I'll alleviate some of the suffering that he's going through. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I don't know what my marks were on that run, but like that has to be still one of the fastest runs I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
Like start to finish, just ripping it apart and like crying mid-run as I'm passing by, you know, people who trying to go on a quaint Sunday bike ride. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I can only like that part of me in that moment is trying to relate to what you were going through that summer and like trying to use running to cope almost with it. So you end up making huge gains as a runner, as an athlete. Or I guess, is there anything more you want to add onto that comment before I move on?
No, I mean, it was a tough summer, but I think it was a summer that I poured a lot of energy into, and it changed my relationship with running, but I also think it got me to the point where I was good enough to, it allowed me to make the sacrifices necessary to quickly become good enough to prepare for college running.
So how did you end up at Colorado State then?
Yeah, no, I'd say I'm very lucky I even looked at Colorado State. So I only even considered the school because I was dating someone who was on the University of Colorado team.
Really?
And yeah, so it was
so you didn't even care.
No, I didn't know I didn't know Fort Collins existed. I didn't really know much about CSU as a program.
Yeah.
I just saw my girlfriend at the time was a runner for the Colorado team, and I was like, oh, there's a team that's an hour north of hers. Might as well check it out. And I looked them up and I sent an email to the coach. I quickly got a response back. We had a phone call. And then I realized it's like, oh, they have 2 All-Americans on their team right now. Mm-hmm. And they have this young guy that just ran 4:03. Maybe these guys are legit. They might have a real program going on here. So
So
I
you
ended up
email the coach. You're like, hey, my girlfriend's an hour north. Can I check it out?
I omitted that. Definitely got a lot of flack from the team when they all found out my first year that I was dating someone at CU. But
Really? What were they saying?
I mean, you can imagine the
I mean, I don't think I can.
you went to WSU. Imagine if a freshman came in that was dating a girl that was on the UW team. The kind of tension that you might get from that. I mean,
Rivals.
it was playful most of the time, but it's also your freshman. You get from seniors all the time, so that's just kind of what happens. But yeah, so ended up talking to Coach Seamers, and I was able to come out on a visit in December of my senior year, and I committed 2 weeks after that visit. I was very dead set on coming here almost instantly.
Wow.
So
you look at Colorado State, you give them an eye because your girlfriend is on the team an hour and a half north.
yeah,
at Boulder.
I definitely looked here for the wrong reasons initially.
So that's what gets you looking at it
Yeah.
and checking it out, emailing the coach. You discover they got a couple of Americans, maybe a program, a Bruin, and you commit 2 weeks after your visit. What was freshman and sophomore year like for you when you got here?
Yeah, I mean, I'll add real quick. The reason why I ended up choosing this place was over the other schools because they were all walk-ons. I wasn't getting scholarship. That wasn't a factor. I chose CSU because Seamers, the head coach, was excited for me to join. The other coaches, it was more like Northern Arizona. Yeah, they went on to win 3 titles, and I could have walked on there. But their coach, it was more of an afterthought if I were to join the team. He was like, yeah I guess you could join if you wanted to. Seamers was actively saying, we don't have money, but I think you'd make a great fit for the team. We really think you could fit in well here. And that enthusiasm made me feel mutually appreciated by the coach, and that was a big reason why I decided to come here.
So you commit. So you end up at Colorado State University.
Right.
Because the coach is actively recruiting you. He's excited. He likes what he sees. What was freshman year like?
It was a shock to the system. I had never run high mileage before.
So what were you doing in high school, and then what was it like when you got here?
In high school, I was running at most 40 miles a week. So
really?
I'd run an occasional 8-mile run. If that would be the longest I would do in high school, most likely more like 7-ish. And I get to CSU, and all of a sudden I get to CSU, and 10 miles a day is very regular for almost every easy run.
Yeah.
So
that's the easy run.
That's our day between the workouts. So I get here and I have to run 10 miles a day most of the days of the week, and I have a long run now. I had never had a long run before, and the long run was 14 miles minimum. If you're on the team, you're expected to go 14 miles for your long run. And
did you just get your ass just beat?
That year. I slept so hard the first month. I was so tired every day.
It's also altitude too.
Yeah, I grew up at sea level, and I'm about a mile above sea level in Fort Collins, and there's less oxygen here, so I'm having to do more work than I had ever done in my life with less oxygen. I'm just huffing and puffing every day.
I can just imagine you panting like a dog.
Yeah, it was
during
brutal.
your easy runs when like you got all Americans out here like, oh, we only have to do 14 miles today.
Exactly. Because I not only had never done that level of training, but I was having to do it with guys who were better than me, and it was also in an environment where I had never acclimated to altitude before. I had never experienced that.
Where were you on the totem pole your freshman year?
I was last. I remember the very first workout of the season. I am rolling up to a park, and it's a grass loop, and we're doing some tempo work in it. And I get there. It's my first day on the team. It's probably our second practice ever. And I see all of the upperclassmen take off their shoes and put on spikes. And I had never done that before in a workout. Competition spikes or something I had always just worn for races. And I see them doing that, and I'm wearing trainers, which are probably triple the weight of the shoes that they were putting on.
Minimum.
And I realized in that moment that I was screwed. And I ended up getting pulled by coach. He just told me to stop halfway through the workout because I was just getting dropped by everybody. And yeah, because it was, first of all, it was one of my first days at altitude. I had never done a workout like that before. and everybody on the team is better than me. So I was a little worried about my status on the team at that point because everybody had just seen me get destroyed in a workout.
So you do so bad. You're so much worse at running than everyone around you.
Yeah.
That you don't even know to change your shoes in the workout, first off. And then B, your coach is like, no, we got to shut this down. You don't got it. You don't got it today.
Yeah, it was more damage control at that point. He
Yeah.
was like, all right, if we keep him in here, he's going to be wrecked for 2 weeks. We need to take him out so he can recover.
And now, fast forward 2 years and you end up finishing number 4 on your team at nationals in cross country, contributing to your team, finishing 9th in the country. And what place were you, like 120th?
I was 118th, yeah.
118th? Sorry for the 2-place disrespect, but how does that happen?
Yeah.
How do you go from literally so bad on your team that you have to get pulled from the first workout to contributing as a significant member of a top 10 team in the country, which is an incredible accomplishment, and then being one of the, top runners on your team now?
I know it's a cliche to say it, but it really was brick by brick. My first year on the team, I
Wow.
redshirted and I didn't travel at all. I only raced a couple races locally in Fort Collins. My second year, I was in uniform now, but I still didn't really travel. I had a couple opportunities. I got to travel once during indoor, once during outdoor. I had a couple sea-level races. They weren't anything crazy. I didn't make a championship team. I didn't make the conference team. The following year, that was the year where I was able to make the conference team for the first time. And then I made the regional meet for the first time. And then the team advanced to nationals, and I had the chance to
Wow.
help score for my team and help us get top 10.
So what goes through your mind at conference when you make it to the team the first time?
I was so insecure that whole season because on a good team, it's deep. There were
You got people behind you.
on that team that year, there were 9 of us with only 7 spots available for nationals. And all 9 were equally deserving to go. And it's cutthroat. You have guys that have worked just as hard as you, that won it just as bad as you, but it's a limited roster and it's a limited number that can compete at the national championship.
So your sophomore year, you uniform for the first time in your career. You're finally having opportunities to race a little bit, but you're insecure about your spot on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And then you roll up to conference. You got 10 guys at conference, right? 9 guys?
We get 9.
You get 9 at conference, and everyone deserves to go, and only 7 get to go on to regionals, and then 7 to natties. So you have to fend for your life at that. What do you finish in conference?
I was our 6th man at conference.
Wow. So you secure your spots to go to regionals.
More
Enough.
or less. I was told after conference that my spot was not secure,
Yeah.
and I had to wait a week to find out.
Wow. Okay. You end up going.
I ended up going.
So, yeah, I guess walk me through the circumstance of that conference performance as a team and individually to then regionals and then to nationals, because that nationals race is where you finish number 4 on your team, arguably have the best race of your career,
Yeah.
and finish 118th in the country. Phenomenal performance. Walk me through the story of that season.
In the 2018 season, we were defending conference champions in the Mountain West, and we had finished top 10 at the national championship in the previous year. So there were high expectations for us. We came into the season ranked 10th in the country, and we started to really back up that ranking. We finished 6th at a huge race in Wisconsin, which is where the national championship was going to be held later that year. And we backed up that performance at the pre-nats race, and we get to conference, and we're ranked, I think, 8th or 9th in the nation.
Wow.
And we have a bad conference race, and we dip in the rankings. Not only that, but our number 1 runner, Cole Rockhold, and 5-time All-American, he ended up suffering a stress fracture in his leg, and he was out for the season after conference.
In the race?
He raced, but the pain was so bad in the race that he finished, but he didn't finish as well as he could have.
Wow.
And at that point, he knew after that race that his season was most likely over.
You lose your number 1 runner.
Yeah, we lose our
at
number 1 runner.
conference.
We find out a few days after conference he gets the MRI. He's done. We don't have him for regionals. And I remember sitting down with the team and really talking about what kind of team we wanted to be, we were ranked 8th in the country with Cole, and we knew we still had a chance to do well at nationals. We go to regionals, we run as a team, we run as a unit, we perform very well, and we qualify. And at nationals, it was really special because we had guys that stepped up, and it's like we call it the next man up philosophy. We had guys that really stepped up, and we were trying to race for Cole, race for the team. I mean, Cole was a 5th-year senior, so that was his last opportunity to run cross country in college, and he was an All-American the year before. We really wanted to race for him, but also race for the guys on the roster that were still home. And long story short, we ended up getting 9th again as a team. But that was without our number one. You put Cole in the situation, and we're talking about a top 5, maybe a podium finish. And we ran to our potential in that race. And it was bittersweet because with Cole and that performance, who knows, maybe we would have had a national trophy. But Cole also would agree that moment in that season, that adversity that we faced, helped bring together the guys. And I think we all learned why we were racing. We were racing for each other, really. Mm-hmm. And that was the best team moment that I've ever had in my running experience.
So the team loses their number one when you're ranked 8th in the country.
Yeah.
You lose your number one at conference, which is 2 races away from nationals. And then the team bounces back, unifies, competes well enough to make it to nationals, and then at nationals finishes 9th.
Yeah.
And you play a big role in that, finishing number 4, where you started on the team bottom of the totem pole. Like, that is such an incredible and inspiring story. And it's also brick by brick, right?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't happen overnight. Like, it was the consistent training day in, day out that made it happen. How did that race and that season as a whole maybe change your relationship with running?
Yeah, that was probably the first year in my running career where I started to branch out and be a person that was beyond just a runner.
Really? What do you mean?
So in high school, I talked about how running was my identity. And I get to college, and that idea was only reinforced by the added commitment, the added work that you have in college. By the end of my sophomore year, like, I was a runner, and I didn't know who I was beyond that. And
really,
yeah, I'd say, yeah, I didn't really know who I was outside of being a college runner. And
can you go deeper into that?
Yeah, it's a lot of athletes have identity issues. They don't know really who they are outside of sports, especially the sports where you're starting at a really young age. I mean,
yeah,
I can't imagine what it's like to be a soccer player and start at age 5. I mean, I started
your entire life.
I started as a freshman in high school, so I at least had a childhood where I wasn't a runner. I mean, some athletes truly start their sport before they even have other memories, and and I think about that. I mean, like, they don't even know what life was like before.
Can't even comprehend it.
I had a swimmer in my class this year who started swimming in elementary school, and she had her last swim meet in February before classes were canceled because of coronavirus. And I mean, she was saying, like, yeah, this is the first time that I'm not a swimmer in like 15 years. Like,
wow.
That is a lot.
Her entire life.
Yeah, her entire life, really. And that's a lot.
Is there a memory that stands out to you where you really struggled with that emptiness of identity?
Yeah, it really, I always thought about it because I'd see teammates around me get injured and have to sit out for maybe 3 or 4 months at a time. And it made me realize, like, what would happen to me if I had that same circumstance and I couldn't run for a while? How would that affect me? And I started to get really scared of that idea because I was unsure of what I would do if running got taken away from me one day. And I knew that was a possibility. It can happen to any of us. I mean, at any point, you never know when your sport's going to end. And I was really scared of that idea, and I was actively trying to figure out who I was beyond running. And I ended up finding that through community and through really finding the reason why I was studying what I was studying. And that's why I got into sustainability. That's why I became more passionate about my business school studies. And yeah, it's funny because my 3rd year in college would be the first year that I wouldn't define myself as only a runner.
And I think what stands out to me about your story is that you embraced your full potential, not only as an athlete, but as a student as well. And I think that's so key in your identity as well, because by embracing your identity as a scholar and as a student in sustainability and business, you had a passion outside of running that you could rely your identity upon. And it's so sad to me when athletes don't believe that they can achieve what they're capable of achieving in things outside of their sport.
Yeah, I think athletes can limit themselves sometimes. They don't realize how the lessons they learn in their sport are applicable outside of sport. They don't think about how they can connect that outside. And it's sad because a lot of athletes learn these remarkable skills in college. They learn how to be a part of a team. They learn how to lead. They learn how to really work toward a goal that's years in advance. I mean, that's very high level skills for 18 to 22-year-olds to have really mastered. And I mean, I like to bring this up a lot. We as student athletes at a very young age learn how to make a long-term goal and work toward it. Not a lot of people understand that at our age. I mean, that's something that you might learn in your career well after college. But for our sport, we'll put a date on the map. It might be a championship. It might be like the first day of a camp or first day of like a major training block. And it might be months or years out, and you're actively working toward that every single day. It becomes your lifestyle. And for other students or other people that we go to school with, they can't really comprehend what goes into that. And more importantly, they can't comprehend what happens to our mental when we fail with that date on the calendar.
What do you mean?
So
go more into that.
What I'd like to say is, after my team finished top 10 in 2018, it was November. We took a couple weeks off, and then in my mind, I was thinking to the next November. I was thinking about what I had to do in the meantime to prepare the team and myself for repeating that success. So a year out, I make this plan to do this, like to work hard and to make the team succeed again.
Yeah. What's on that plan?
I mean, that's you talk about your training. You talk about the academic rigor of it going into another year deeper in school. You have I'm now a junior, and then you go into your senior year.
Concretely, from a training standpoint.
From a training standpoint, it's upping your mileage. So I was at 90 miles a week. Throughout that next year, I started running 100 miles a week. I started going into the training room more often. I started getting more treatment, more massages, and I really had to put more effort into keeping my body and my mind mentally prepared for that demand of success.
Yeah, necessary effort.
Yeah, it is a necessary
from a mental
effort.
and physical standpoint, so that you can put your body through what it needs to be put through.
Yeah,
and you put your body through that so that it's capable of doing what you expect it to do come November. So fast forward, and I was here living with you that summer, watching you train, running 100-mile week after 100-mile week after 100-mile week at altitude, and you're that every single day you're on the edge of injury, right? Like our bones are always on the edge of breaking. Like that is the reality of our sport specifically, because it's so much pounding and so much pressure. But that's just what it is. Like that's what everyone does. That's what the All-Americans before you did, and that's what you do, and that's what the All-Americans after you are going to do.
That's just part of it.
Walk me through what happens that season.
Yeah, so we go into that cross-country season with very high expectations.
Yeah.
From a national perspective, but also I expected a lot of myself and the team. We came in ranked 13th in the country.
Yeah. And
throughout the season, it did seem to be disappointment after disappointment. We didn't open very strong. We took a huge dive in the rankings. The next race, we dropped out of the rankings. We get to conference and we perform well. We get second. We were happy with that, but then we ended up not qualifying to nationals. And that was a very rocky season for the team, especially considering that the year before we had a great, fantastic cross-country season. We were top 10 in the country that year. And then we went on to win 2 titles we won the indoor championship and the outdoor championship for track as a team. So my third year as a runner, everything did fall in line. And I put this goal on the calendar that I want to go back to nationals and perform at a higher level than I did before. And I completely squander that opportunity. I prepare as hard as I can. I do everything mentally and physically possible to prepare, and I fall short. And to come back from that is really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And it's something that people our age often don't understand. And that's something I think student athletes have a perspective when we watch other sports. It could be college or it could be professional. I always think about the team that loses, say, a football game or basketball game at a championship. They have to go home after that.
Yeah, they got to get on a plane.
They have to get on a plane and fly home
plane ride.
and live with themselves. Like that's not, like fans don't really think about that. They don't. It's not like you just reset the next day. I mean that season continues to haunt me, and it was like almost a year ago.
Walk me through that failure and how it felt in the moment. What was that plane ride like coming home from regionals?
Really brutal. I mean, you let down yourself, you let down your coach, you let down your team, your
What did the coach say to
administration.
you guys? What do you guys say to yourselves?
I
Is
mean,
anyone even talking?
no one's talking. It's a very quiet,
Silent
It's a very
ride
quiet
back.
trip home, and it's tough, but it's also the second that happens, the only thing that can make you feel better is thinking about when you can get redemption. And
Really?
for me, I just started thinking about indoor season. I was like, all right, I just want to make up for it in indoor. And fortunately, we were able to get redemption because the team was able to win the indoor title. We won conference. I was able to make great strides in my own athletic performance with mile and with scoring at the conference championship. And then coronavirus happens, and then outdoors gone. I remember thinking during that I had a really brutal season in the fall, but then I got redemption in the winter. So I can live with myself as an athlete. I can feel like at least there was something good that happened from this year. And it was also validation that all that work I put in the previous year wasn't for nothing. I was able to say, okay, even though it didn't pay off in cross country, it paid off in the winter. And I feel for the athletes that aren't going to get that shot at redemption, whether it's because they get hurt, whether they're seniors and they lose their season to a pandemic, or any other. I mean, there's so many other reasons why an athlete might not get to have that next opportunity. But that's something that's a perspective that it's really hard to understand if you haven't lived it. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of athletes in the NCAA that have gone through exactly what I've gone through, if not worse. And they may not ever have a chance to redeem themselves or grow as an athlete because of that experience.
Like, how have you grown through sport and your experience as a college athlete?
I've used sport to enhance my personality and my persona. I haven't running could end tomorrow, and I'd feel really proud of who I am as a person. And there were points in my career where if that happened, I would not feel the same way.
Yeah.
I would feel ready to take on that next step in my life. And that's not me saying that I'm ready for sport to be over, because I love it and it's a really important part of my life. But I'm really proud of how much I've been able to grow as an individual and know that there's so much more to life than college athletics. I mean, this builds on what we were just talking about. During indoor track, I challenged myself to, and it sounds crazy, but I challenged myself to smile, like actively smile before every race, before every gun went off. So I wish there were pictures of me like on a line. I'd probably look like a crazy person, but I realized like in that moment, like I want to be happy, because if I'm happy, I'm relaxed. And if I'm relaxed, I'm going to perform well. And I did that at the Iowa State meet in, it was at Iowa State University. It was a big mile opportunity for me. And I ended up running a 4:05 mile. I had a huge PR. And
wow.
I think that I was largely able to do that because I put myself in a position to be successful by enjoying the opportunity and by slowing down and appreciating what the work that went into it, and just knowing that the only pressure is the pressure that I create for myself. Obviously, there's expectations that are created by my team and by my coaches, but no one's going to hold yourself to a higher standard than yourself. And that's something that in that moment I really valued.
My brother, thank you, dude. I think that's a great note to end it. Your story is so inspiring and incredible because it's truly a testament to the power and value of brick by brick and consistency. And your career didn't just happen overnight, right? This is what, year, I'm guessing 10, 9 for you or something. And only now in the last 2 years are you starting to see the benefits of those investments and sacrifices. And your growth is just so inspiring to me, and I'm thankful for you, man. So I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. Thank you for you and your D1-on-1 team. This is a really cool way to share athletes' stories and to shed some light on some things that I think a lot of people don't really understand the way that they're supposed to. And I appreciate that.